Hello and happy welcome to the power of trauma. My name is Chantal, and without further ado, let's start and get into it. I'm going to show you the presentation of the power of trauma, and all along, I'm going to guide you through it and explain everything to you. So, grab yourself a drink, some food, sit back and relax and enjoy the show. Now, happy welcome to the power of trauma. This is my most basic masterclass where I explain everything to you that has something to do with trauma and why trauma is so powerful. So, what are we going to talk about today? First of all, we're going to look at what is trauma. What is trauma freedom, meaning to be free of trauma? Which types of trauma exist? Why trauma is so powerful and what it is responsible for. How can I dissolve trauma? Nervous system 101, responses, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, intro to window of tolerance and polyvagal theory, neuroplasticity and what trauma does with your body, how your basic needs, your chronic pain, and your lifestyle are connected to the nervous system, and the goal of nervous system work and trauma healing. So, first of all, who am I? My name's Chantal. I'm half German, half Filipino. I am currently somewhat in my late 30s when you see this. So as of 2025, I'll be turning 37. And I'm a splenic projector 3-5 for those human design people who know what they're talking about or who know what that is. In my astro or my astrology, my sun is an Aquarius. I have a Scorpio moon and a Pisces rising, so depth is like my middle name. And I work as a trauma healer essentially, so the term of my job is basically being a trauma healer, but that entails being a trauma therapist, a business coach, a life coach. So it's like this kind of holistic approach. And I live in my chosen country, Dubai. I mean, Dubai is not a country, in my chosen city, Dubai, but in my chosen country of the UAE. And I'm leading my business in trauma healing, and I've been leading it since 2022 and supported more than 300 clients in their trauma healing as of today. I have been an entrepreneur for more than 15 years, and I've been owning my businesses for 5 years, my own businesses. And I've been building businesses and kind of just having them as passive income. And I'm currently leading 4 different business aspects. So trauma healing, my trauma healer certification, which is currently available in German only, but soon coming in English. My trauma healing in business and a tutorial website for pole dance. So that's like the 4th leg of my business. And I'm currently leading a team of 4 coaches and I'm loving it. And it's just like the best. So half of my business is in German, meaning that I started building my business in German and with German clients, which is why like I'm now getting to a point where I'm translating everything into English, because I actually chose against going international first. I wanted to cater to the German audience because they have a very specific need, and now catering to all of y'all, and I'm like super excited and super stoked to be here for you as well. So let's get right into it. What is trauma? Definition of trauma of psychiatrist Bessel van der Kolk. He's the guy who wrote The Body Keeps Score, the great book. I recommend it to everybody. Trauma is a reaction to an event that overwhelms the central nervous system, which leads to a change in processing of memories and performance. Trauma is not the story of how something happened, but the current traces of the past fear that lived inside of you, or that currently still live inside of you. Maston Kipp's integrative definition of trauma was also something I wanted to bring to you, and something that I really like, which is trauma is every experience of danger, disconnect, isolation, or immobilization that result in physical or emotional wounds and that dysregulate the optimum functioning of the body, the emotions, the brain, the mind, and the health of a person. also love that kind of definition. So trauma is something that's very encompassing. It's something that affects your entire life, doesn't just affect one part of your life. You may think it's one part, but it actually affects everything else. And this is why this work is so important, and working with trauma is so important, because what you don't know, you don't know. You know? How would you know? How would you know? So, what is possible when you're trauma-free? What becomes possible when you're trauma-free? And I want you really to check yourself, because I used to be on the fight spectrum, which means I would always think of myself as more than I actually was. If you'd ask me, hey, do you accept yourself? I would say, like, of course I do, of course. But it's like this kind of over-the-top ego, of course. It's not really this true embodied self-acceptance that I had. I had this kind of, like, again, over the top ego, self-esteem and self-confidence, and I knew how to, like, show you how I would like myself, but genuinely, like, really deep within, I didn't actually like myself. So when you are trauma-free, you accept yourself. You have self-acceptance. You have a clear sense of identity and purpose. If I ask you, who are you? Can you answer that question without stating your occupation, without stating where you're from, without stating your age and your name, just like your essence, right? When you're trauma-free, you can have self-compassion and softness. You don't think of softness as danger or weak, right? You feel compassion with yourself and with others, therefore. You are able to protect yourself. You have self-protection. You do not let just anybody trample across your boundaries and just do whatever they want to do, so you know how to protect yourself. You have the capacity to draw solace from relationships. You have the capacity to draw love from relationships. So it's not just solace, it's everything that you can draw from relationships, whether it's solace, whether it's even sadness, whether it's happiness. This is the capacity that you get when you grew up trauma-free. The capacity to fully relax in your body, which becomes very, very important when you have for everybody, obviously, but even more so, it becomes important when you're an athlete. It becomes important when you do a very strenuous job, and the time that you don't do it, you have to the capacity to fully relax. Otherwise, you're never going to fully recover. It's always going to be this kind of like 50%, 50% okay, you know? And this is not what the body is for. The body is always able to fully recover, but for that, it needs to be trauma-free. To have the capacity of full self-expression is what it means to be trauma-free. You're not afraid of what anybody thinks. You're able to express yourself fully. You're able to be as loud as you want to be, as quiet as you want to be, as soft as you want to be, as outspoken, reserved. Whatever it is that you want to be, you will be that. You have no fears and worries. This does not mean that your body's not able to produce fears. Oh, absolutely. Because a fear response is a natural response of self-defense. Meaning, or actually not just self-defense, it's a survival response. Meaning, if, for instance, an animal were to be in my apartment and would come attack me now, I would be afraid and be like running away, because that is my natural fear response. So the natural fear response responds to two things. It responds to heights and it responds to noises. So if there would be like a tiger growling, I'd be like, what the fuck? Ah! And then I'd probably run away or fight it. So these are the two options. However, every other fear is fear caused by trauma, fear caused by insecurities, fear caused by not being, for instance, not having self-worth or not trusting yourself. So these are fears that can be avoided, and these are ultimately, unfortunately, mostly fears that will create fear-based diseases and disorders. Yeah. So any type of anxiety, any type of panic attack, any type of panic disorder, any type of generalized anxiety disorder, these don't stem from the natural body response of fear. These stem from trauma. The willpower and motivation is what you will get when you are trauma free. And I'm talking about raw willpower. I'm not talking about overriding your body to make your body do something that your body actually doesn't have the capacity to do at the moment. I'm talking about real willpower where you know your body, you know who you are, you know what you can achieve, and you will achieve even more than that just because you believe in yourself. And automatically, because of that, because you know yourself, you have the drive and the motivation to do whatever it is that you're here to do. You will achieve inner peace when you're trauma free. This is something that most people maybe won't even achieve in their lifetime because there's so much turmoil within them, and there's so much fight and so much avoidance that they don't even get to inner peace. It's like, inner peace, what's that? And especially if you're anxious, you tend to have ruminating thoughts that keep coming and keep coming, and that is not what inner peace is. Inner peace is quiet. Inner peace is having no thoughts. Can you imagine having no thoughts? That's what's gonna, like, that's what it sounds like within my head. There's nothing in there. I mean, it's not that I'm dumb or something, but it's just, there are no voices. There's nothing talking. There are no ruminating thoughts in there. It's just peaceful, just quiet. When you're trauma-free, you work and focus on self-care. And I'm not talking just about, like, for example, brushing your teeth and getting ready and showering. I'm really also talking about taking care of yourself and your body. That means in every capacity possible. For instance, it means taking care of your emotional well-being, doing things that will help you stabilize your emotions. That means doing somatic practices, for instance. That means working on your trauma. That means getting psychoeducation to just be more conscious of your topics, of what you're carrying around. Self-care can look also like being just working out, for instance, or feeding yourself food that helps you, that aids you, that's good, and not that's trash. So this is also part of self-care, like being careful with your body as well and taking good care of it. Believe that life is a gift and inherent trust in life. So being trauma-free means being free of depression, being free of any type of disorder, because all these disorders are just there as a symptom of trauma. Meaning that when you don't have that, you believe that life's a gift. You trust life. You have a very life positive attitude, right? You know that everything's going to be fine. You know that everything is there for a reason, that everything is going to be great. And even if it's not, it's just a challenge, or it's just a momentarily growth for you to become a better person. And when you're trauma-free, you have self-worth and self-confidence. I think the self-confidence part is quite simple and easy to explain. The self-worth is really the hard part, because what trauma does is it crushes your self-worth. It starts so early, sometimes even prenatal, that no self-worth was even built to begin with. So that is something we have to focus on when we work on your traumas, not just dissolving your trauma and your attachment wounds, but also building self-worth, building self-confidence, building you as a person. You will feel more mature and like an adult without losing your essence. So it's not kind of like the stiff adultness, of, oh, I have to work and then I have to pay my bills. It doesn't feel like that when you're truly trauma-free. It feels like you love taking responsibility. You want to move something in this world. It feels like you can move a mountain. You can fight your fight. You can fight for your cause. It doesn't feel like it's draining. It doesn't feel like it's too much. It doesn't feel like you are inconsequential. It just feels like you're powerful. You're fucking powerful. That's what it feels like. And it makes you feel unlimited. I know my potential is unlimited. There's absolutely no limit on my potential. I just need to use it. And that's what I'm doing. Like, I'm literally living my potential with my business. I'm going international with my business. It's like the biggest thing that I am about to do already. And I'm writing a book at the same time. I'm preparing the international launch of the trauma healer certification in a couple of years. So this is already going on in the background. I am living my full potential. I am amassing a team of trauma healers that can support me with my mission and my vision. And I will never, ever, ever limit myself. And if I do limit myself with certain things, I know, oh, that's a limiting belief. I need to work on that. What is possible when you're trauma free? You have space for every emotion in your body. Every emotion. No emotion is too dangerous. You will be fine with fear. You'll be fine with sadness. You'll be fine with anger. You'll be even more fine with happiness, with contentment. You'll be fine with peace, love. Everything is safe in your body. You have no triggers. Doesn't mean that things cannot make you upset. Of course, things can make you upset. That's totally normal. But things don't trigger you anymore. That your body gets triggered to be in a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. So you don't become like a mindless minion where you just react reactively. You will always know, oh, this bothers me. What am I going to do about it? There is silence in your mind. Like, as I said, you don't hear any voices. It's just quiet. It's really just nice. Yeah. There are no problems at all in your life. Like, I haven't had a problem in forever. I think like 5 years now or something. Challenges. They're challenges at best. But I feel like whenever I talk about my life, it's never in a, this kind of way. It's like always very, oh, geez, like this happened and this happened. But it's always exciting. It's always like there's just this energy about it. You have access to your true energy. Like, I am fucking energetic. I have so much energy. There's rarely any time where I don't have energy. I don't have PMS, stuff like that. Like, even from a cyclical point of view, I always have energy, and it's very, very stable. And that's just like the beauty of trauma freedom. You can truly love and build intimacy with people. I always say, if you don't love yourself, you cannot love somebody else. It's just like what RuPaul would always say, right? If you can't love yourself, how are you going to love somebody else? Can I get an amen? And this is exactly it. The amount of love and the capacity of love that you give yourself is the only capacity that you can give to other people. The amount of love, the depth that you are with yourself, that you can see yourself, is the depth you can see with other people, and the depth of intimacy you can only build with other people. Now, when you hate yourself and you're with somebody else, you're always going to feed. You use the relationship in order to gain something, but you are not truly, truly able to love somebody else. And the sad part about that is you only realize that when you are there. You only realize that when you actually love yourself. The capacity to love other people is like tremendous. Everything else is people pleasing. And that's like a big, big problem, because you don't know. You don't know if you are with your partner because you truly love them, or if it's because it's a trauma bond and it was due to trauma and the things that you had to repeat and repeat to learn something from them and to dissolve your trauma, because trauma in your body keeps repeating. It keeps drawing on situations that you need to do again until you dissolve the trauma. And that can become a very tedious and a very extensive and long process. There are people who are 50 and they're not done with it. And it's easier and faster, obviously, if somebody supports you with it. And if you are in a one-to-one, for example, relationship, in a one-to-one support, if you have a sort of a room where you can go and talk about that, so that these patterns will be detected as early as possible. You are mature and free of inner parts and voices. So these inner parts and voices are something that I'm going to go deeper into when it comes, or when the project Dysregulate comes up. So Dysregulate is I'm going to show you at the end of the masterclass. Dysregulate is a course where I go deep, deep, deep into nervous system work, trauma healing, what trauma healing consists of, and so on and so forth. So this is coming up, this is coming soon. And if you're mature and free of inner parts and voices, that means your inside, if you have trauma, consists of many different parts. These could be inner child parts. These could be old parts from your parents. Introjects is what we call them. These could be soul parts. There's so many different types of parts and voices within you that tell you a certain thing. They could also be negative beliefs, for instance, or stuff like that. You truly have a lot of time. Time feels maximized. So when you're trauma-free, the feeling of time has changed. A year is like a billion years to me. A year is so much time. A day sometimes is so much. Like, I am so present. I am present in every and each moment, and that extends the time, which is amazing. Like, if I'm with a person for 3 hours, it feels like we've been together for the whole day. It's amazing. You embody the creator and creatrix of your life. You truly know that you are the creator and creatrix of your own life. You're able to create whatever life that you desire when you are trauma-free. Your children will barely have trauma-related issues. They won't have anxiety. They won't have depression. They won't have ADHD. They won't have these things because you've already worked on them and you will not give it to them. And when you are trauma-free, you will have prosperity within and without. And of course, health. So the prosperity can be, so richness is something that I define as very holistic, or very holistically. Like, I define prosperity as you having fulfilling relationships, you having a fulfilling life, a fulfilling profession, an environment that fulfills you. Pets, if you want, animals that fulfill you, money, where you can do things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to. Like, you can just travel whenever you want. So the freedom, financial freedom, is also a very important part of prosperity, but it's not the main part, right? And of course, you being healthy and feeling truly great, truly free, enriched, loved, cared for, especially by yourself. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty. What kind of trauma are we even talking about? There's so many different kinds of trauma. I'm not even going to start with systemic trauma and all of that. It's there, but I'm going to just briefly explain to you what all these words mean. So we have attachment trauma and developmental trauma. This is the type of trauma that happens between the age of 0 to 18. Attachment trauma and developmental trauma can happen prenatally. It can be passed on from your mother, from your father, from your ancestors to you. However, when we think about ancestors like grandma, great-grandma, etc., that's when we think of transgenerational trauma. This is trauma, for example, from war that has been passed on to generations further down the line. Meaning, for instance, if your great-grandparent had to starve during war, this kind of starvation, or always trying to look for food, will develop within you or your kids if it's not addressed. Attachment trauma, however, is trauma that happens with the direct attachment of the caretaker. So this can be parents, this can be caretakers, this can even be adoptive parents. And with adoptive parents, be very careful. If you have adoptive parents or foster parents, you will have 4 types of attachment trauma. So 2 from your biological mom and dad, and then the other 2 could stem from your foster or your adoptive parents. If they have topics, if they have trauma, they might as well likely pass it on to you. So that all depends. If you've already been an adopted child, that's already like, you've already been separated. That's already attachment trauma. That's already happening. But the amount by which it can be, I guess you could say, by which it can be dampened or caught, like softened by the positive influence of the adoptive parents, can be tremendous. So they can be a positive force. They can be a positive factor for the child's trauma freedom, for the child's positive development. So it can make it worse. It can make it better. Okay, so both can happen. And healing is always relational healing. otherwise it would be bodily healing, right? We have a cut and then we just heal from it and that's it. But usually healing, when we think about trauma, is always relational aspect, or the relational aspect of healing. So we have transgenerational trauma. Transgenerational trauma can also be like, I don't know, 10 generations, even like beyond. So usually we say 7 generations. That's like the usual amount, but it can even be older than that. So you'll feel it. You'll feel it when it's there. Shock trauma. Shock trauma is, for instance, an accident. When you do, because I do pole, or I used to do pole at least more often. When I do pole and you fall down, that's like a shock, right? When you have a car accident, when there's something that just bumped into each other, it's like this, oh my God, like you usually have a shock from that. That's a shock trauma, usually collisions, usually natural disasters. These type of traumas are really easy to treat. They're very easy to dissolve, at least with my trauma healing techniques. And they include a time where you are in shock, usually. Where developmental trauma, attachment trauma, they happen so often that you just start to believe them and you start to become that person. With shock trauma, it's more like, it's shock trauma when you've been in a shock and you're like, ooh, what did just happen? So there are very easy ways to overcome that. Secondary trauma. Secondary trauma is, for instance, if you watch somebody being abused, if you watch somebody being raped, if you watch somebody being a victim of some sorts, if you watch a traumatizing event, you're not the one experiencing it, but you're watching it. You're secondary, basically. That can also happen, especially to kids who watch their parents being abusive to each other, or if they abuse drugs or something like that. So this is called secondary trauma, or something happens to the siblings or something. Yeah. Then we have complex PTSD. Simple PTSD, it's kind of funny because PTSD is never simple, but PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder, and it happens usually to soldiers, for instance, if they have experienced war and if they've, I don't know, for instance, experienced something blowing up, and then when they come back home, this noise is so ingrained in their system that whenever there's a bang or something, they get transported back to that event. So it's usually very visceral and visual, meaning they will actually have a hallucination of some sort. This is called a flashback. They will actually see the event and they're not themselves and they cannot function properly in that moment, and they're in complete survival mode, usually accompanied also by a panic attack. Doesn't always have to have it, but happens a lot. Complex PTSD occurs usually from attachment trauma, especially when you've been beaten as a child, especially. The only difference between complex PTSD and normal or simple PTSD is that the flashback is not visual, the flashback is emotional. You feel an enormous amount of distress, an enormous amount of, let's say, grief, fear, anger, depends on what type of PTSD you have. And for instance, when you've been beaten by your father and you're a girl and you go to martial arts, because I also practice martial arts, just your teacher doing this to you or trying to hit you will cause an emotional flashback and you're transported back to that time. If it's visual, then you know that that person has PTSD. But because that father didn't just hit you, that father probably also assaulted you or insulted you, verbally assaulted you, and so on and so forth. So there are probably other elements. And then we have to think about the mother as well. Why didn't the mother do anything? Why didn't she protect you? So that's why it's complex PTSD, because it's not really about a scapegoat and a culprit. It's usually about the complexity of the relationships that where trauma arises from, because it's neither or never just one parent. It's usually the synergy of both parents being both shitty to you, and or one parent trying to save it or trying to rescue it or trying to be some form of a secure attachment, especially when they're already separated. Yeah. Then we have systemic trauma. Systemic trauma is all kinds of systemic, like Racism is systemic trauma. Systemic not indifferences, imbalances, sorry. Like, for instance, when you have racism and white people are preferred in a certain community or in a certain country, this can lead to systemic trauma. Very, very popular systemic trauma is what happened with the Nazi times in Germany, where not just the Jewish people, but also like gay people, LGBTQIA, even German people were traumatized by it. So this is like a systemic trauma. This is also manipulation. This is a propaganda. This is any type that includes a complete system. Yeah. Past life trauma, very interesting. Most people come to me like, Chantal, I don't believe in past lives. I don't think that's... And I tell them that's okay. You don't need to believe in it in order to have it. It's kind of like, I'm sure 100 years ago, people would tell, if I were to exist 100 years ago, people would tell me, Chantal, trauma is not real. Yeah, of course, just because you say it's not real doesn't mean it's not there, right? So just because you think something's not there doesn't mean it's not there, yeah? Past life trauma is very, very simple. We as souls, we move from incarnation to incarnation. And there are certain things like phobias. Phobias are usually a past life thing. Very easy, very, very, very easy to dissolve. If you cannot, and this is always like a little sign, if you cannot discern it from this life, if you know, okay, your parents were the most lovely, wonderful parents there were, your grandparents were not in war, I don't know, they were in a secluded island where nothing ever happened, everything was fine, everything was cheeky, you feel so blessed, but you have this fear of fire. That's a past life thing, boo-boo. You have this fear of certain bugs, but like really crippling fear, not just like, oh, that's uncomfortable, yeah. And this is basically what past life trauma is about. How do we dissolve it? Very similarly to how we dissolve shock trauma. It's very simple, it's very easy, it's not that hard. It just needs, for instance, a bit time. For instance, we could use regressions, we could use different types of techniques that I have developed within my Trauma Healer Certificate program. So, moving on. Origins of attachment trauma, because this is the most prevalent trauma that there is, and I wanted to bring you the origins of attachment trauma, and now you will notice why attachment trauma and trauma in general will have so much power over you, because it replays itself. It keeps on going. You will find it over and over again in your life happening, whether at work, whether in your relationships, whether within yourself, that you're continuing the work of your parents if they've been shitty parents. Yeah. So trauma and dysregulation of parents, of caretakers, that's how attachment trauma is formed. Stress, just stress during pregnancy and childbirth, or fear. That fear becomes your fear, unfortunately. Missing attachment and bonding after birth. Breaking of bond of any kind that hasn't been repaired. And when I say breaking of bond, I'm talking about you're crying and your parents just left you in the room. They looked at you, they said, stop crying. If you won't stop crying, I'll go. And then they just left. That's breaking of bond. Any type of breaking of bond that hasn't been repaired. Them apologizing to you, them saying, hey, I'm so sorry, I was just upset. Because fuck, man, a child is not to be left alone. If you leave your child crying, that's the worst thing you can do to your child. Defamation and minimization of emotions. Happens so many times, like, oh no, it's not that bad, don't cry. That's a minimization of your emotions. You're entitled to have your emotions. If a 1-year-old child cries because something fell on the ground, that's their way of expressing, oh, I have lost something. And your responsibility as a mother, as a father, as a caregiver is to support and to be there in their emotions, but not to minimize them, because that's going to lead to somebody who will not stand for their emotions and who will not address them, not show them, not display them, because, oh, I shouldn't be crying. Oh, no, I shouldn't get angry. And that's, again, a loss of self. Verbal and emotional abuse, I think that's very, evident. I think that's very clear. Verbal and physical violence. Shaming is like the thing a lot of moms do. Especially like the Asian moms, especially the religious moms, especially the Mediterranean moms. Are like, look at you, look at how you look. Like this shame or being shamed is such a deep emotion that goes so deep and can cause depression, can cause heaviness, can cause so much that you ultimately start to shame yourself and others. Neglect, not having been there for your child, not being near your child, always working, just leaving your child alone, them having keys, like not even being picked up from school when they're young, and then they just have to find food themselves, Yeah. Not being granted basic needs and not having these basic needs met. So usually like the phases for the mom to nurture the child is from age 0 to 6, 5, 6. And this is where it is all about your basic needs and your body. And when a mom starts to feed their baby based on a clock and not based on when the baby's hungry, that kid, that human being is going to learn my needs are not important. I'm not going to eat when I'm actually hungry. I'm going to eat when it's appropriate to eat. That's a surefire way to any type of food related disorders. So any type of eating disorders, this is the reason. Not always the reason. There are also more reasons than that. But yeah, not being granted the basic needs of drinking whenever you feel thirsty, of having your diaper changed when it's full, like sleeping when you're actually sleepy, but being put to bed and then laying awake for like long hours of time and not being attended to. So it's kind of like this, my needs as a mom are more important than my child's needs, which is at the beginning not good, because obviously your needs are important, but you need to have both. You need to meet your needs and the needs of your child. If you can't do that, please don't have children, just don't. When you are not heard and seen, when a child cries, there is a point that it will start to go into freeze. You will soon see what it means. If it goes into freeze, it starts dissociating. When it's dissociating, it starts to go into a kind of depressive state. This is not a state where you want your child to be, especially not a baby. This is where trauma happens. Then you will have a child that is very emotionless, that will forget everything, that will become very depressed very soon, very early in their life, that will have developmental difficulties as well, or developmental problems. If you've not been heard and not seen, you tend to become a person that either needs to be heard and seen because you're so loud and you're so big, meaning big as in fat, you start to gain weight so that you can be seen, right? Or you become invisible. You stop hearing yourself and you stop seeing yourself. Therefore, you can become very thin, very skinny, and lose your voice. I'm not literally saying lose your voice. Sometimes it happens to kids that they don't speak, or they don't speak for a long time. But losing your voice also means becoming like this, like speaking like this, very, like not even being grounded, not even being there. Harshness, coldness, and punishments. I think this is like a no-brainer, right? That you develop attachment trauma from that. When you feel your parents don't love you, when you feel your parents hate you, that sucks. Because all a baby wants is being loved, feeling that it exists for a reason, that it's okay to exist, that it has a safe space, that it has safety. Manipulation, narcissism, little empathy. I think I don't need to explain that. Not being taken seriously, being laughed at, being made fun of. So if your parents didn't take you seriously, you're not going to take yourself seriously. You're not going to take your wishes, your needs, anything you want in future seriously. Therefore, you're always going to procrastinate. You're going to find excuses. You're going to become a victim of your own life. Masking, parentification. So masking is when something is bad, but the parent's like, no, it's okay. Like putting a different mask on, right? Or saying, I'm fine when you're obviously not fine. And parentification means that you become the parent. So your parents are so immature that you start to become more responsible, which is not your fucking job. It's their fucking job to be a proper parent to you. Or you're taking care of your siblings. That's also something that children are not supposed to do. No matter how big the family, then stop fucking have more kids if you can't take care of them properly, because it needs adult guidance. It doesn't need children's guidance. Yeah. Emotional unavailability. This is also, to me, very evident and very clear, because there are parents who just have kids and they don't really interact with them. They're not emotionally available. They just interact with them superficially. So how was your day? What did you do? That's it. And this is not enough. This will rear children that will use a lot of substances. For instance, because there's no depth, right? So they will use social media to consume, to fill their hole. This is where emotional unavailability is, where this hole starts to form. That seems that you always need external validation to fill that hole. And social media addiction, porn addiction, sweets, food addiction, drug addiction, smoking, drinking, partying, all of that, sex addiction. Yeah. Parents who are too anxious, also attachment trauma. Anything that's too is not good. Too anxious, being babied too much, like helicopter parents, where there was like, oh, be careful, be careful. These kids are actually going to become really insecure, or they're going to become fighters that are always in resistance to everything. Yeah, one or the other. Control, coercion, blame, dependencies, addiction, perfectionism. I think that's also very clear that starts attachment trauma. Being perfect is not good. That's not something that you want to aspire, because it's normal to make mistakes. Human beings learn from mistakes. Otherwise, they don't grow. So you want your child to make mistakes, and you want your child to be okay to make mistakes and learn from them. Obviously, criticism and bullying starts attachment trauma. No play and no joy. Like, positive emotions were down-regulated or harshly criticized. Like, parents asking you, what are you smiling about? Like, they're always being like grumpy, being aggressive, and you not having any play or joy in your little life. And that's very, very sad. And obviously, why attachment trauma can form. Now, these are the basic needs that I am addressing with you. And one of the most basic needs is I am allowed to exist and have a right to do so. I would love to ask you to just feel into your body. Close your eyes if you want to, and then just feel while I read these words, and just feel if it resonates with you or if it doesn't, so that at least you know, okay, what are my topics? What are my points? So, I am allowed to exist and have a right to do so. I am loved. I belong. My needs are important and are always taken seriously. I feel myself and can therefore feel my child, if you have a child. Basic needs. So, basic needs is everything that obviously your body needs to survive. If you want to go into more depth, check out the Maslow's pyramids of basic needs, or of generally of needs. So, one of the biggest driver for basic needs is food, nutrition, drinks, sleep, movement, breathing, and environment. So, when it comes to nutrition and food, you can ask yourself, what do you eat? How often do you eat? What is the quality of food you like? Or what is the quality of food like that you eat? Do you have food-related issues, addiction, or disorders? Drinks. What do you drink? How often do you drink? What is the quality of your drinks? Do you have drink-related issues, addictions, or disorders? Sleep. How often do you sleep? How long do you sleep? When do you sleep? What's the sleep quality like? Do you have sleep-related issues or issues of waking up at night for other reasons? Movement. How often do you move? How long do you move? Do you move for 10 minutes? Or do you move for 10 minutes for each hour that you've sat? Do you have any movement-related issues? Any tension? Any incapacities? Breath. Can you breathe into your belly? How do you breathe in general? Do you have breathing interruptions? breathing disabilities, and so on. Is your breathing shallow? Yeah, or is it deep? Environment. What do your relationships look like? Do they nurture you or do they keep you down? Are they loving and can they hold your feelings? Do they constantly suggest solutions and are they overwhelmed by your plain existence? Do you feel safe in your relationships? Do you also feel safe in your work environment? So it doesn't necessarily just need to be relationships, partnerships, or friendships, or family, but it can also be your work environment. Home. Is your home safe? Do you feel protected or do you feel at the mercy of others? Does your home stress you out with too much noise, cold, warmth, etc.? And do you feel safe and can you relax at home? Can you truly recharge at home? Now, what is safe connection or what does it look like? Safe connection means that you can show yourself authentically without having to be afraid of breaking ties. And you can let others be exactly as they are without it being too much for you as well. But if you have trauma, the power of trauma is that people tend to be too much for you because you have pain there. You have something that needs to be resolved there. So safe connection is non-judgmental. It's based on trust. People are able to hold your emotions, you're able to hold their emotions, especially to be able to accompany anger adequately. Accompaniment of children and holding emotions simply means that you can take it if I get angry. That it's okay for you that I get angry. If I get angry and express my anger towards you, I mean, for instance, I could get angry, that's one thing. You might not even feel it. Secondly, I could get angry and express it to you. It depends on the expression that I choose by which you're able to hold the emotions. So for example, if I choose to scream at you, which is of course very disrespectful, it'll be harder for you to hold those emotions because you don't want to be screamed at or whatnot than if I just say, listen, I'm really angry at you. But if I say, listen, I'm really angry at you, this makes me very, very upset. And you're like, oh my God, no, I didn't mean to. That is not being able to hold the emotions because you're already reacting from a very either it's already reactive, meaning that you're flighting, so you're running away, you're like, oh no, or you're people pleasing and you want to make a do and you want to make things right for me, but it's really just about me expressing my anger, and it's about you not reacting to my anger but just waiting for what the reason is for me to be angry. To be mirrored and be confronted with one's issues. So safe connection means that my friends can mirror things to me. They can tell me, listen, I noticed something. May I mirror something to you? May I give you feedback on one thing that I just noticed? And then I'm like, sure. And then they were like, okay, here's what I noticed. Are you still rescuing that person if you let them stay in your place for free? I'm like, oh yeah, oh my God, you're right. So this would be mirroring. Obviously, if somebody has lots of issues and they tell you this is your fault, that is manipulation. That's not really mirroring. Mirroring can only be done if you have a 100% safe connection and if you're eye level, right? So if you trust the person to have your best interests at heart and not to do it in a manipulative way to say oh, that's your issue, you need to work on that, but more like, hey, I noticed something and this might be of value to you, but even if you don't fix it, I'm fine, if that makes sense, right? So I would always confront my friends with their issues, but for the love of God, I don't care if they fix it or not, because that's on them. And if it doesn't endanger or hamper or even, I think endanger is a really good word for that, actually. Or diminish. If it doesn't diminish the quality of friendship we have and the quality of time we spend together with each other, then I'm cool with whatever issues you're having. But if it affects me as well, and if you're starting to project onto me, and projection means that you have issues that you project onto another person as if it's a projector, a projector projecting onto a white wall. And this happens a lot with people. People who are hurt, who are in pain, they project all the time. It could be something simple as, oh yeah, we all don't have time. that's a clear projection because I have lots of time. I have loads of time. Time is what I have a lot of. So that's, as you can see, like this is a projection of the person assuming that nobody has time, because in her worldview or in his worldview, nobody has time because they don't have time. So safe connection also means to be able to establish connection and love, and to have this kind of warmth feeling, this warmth, cozy feeling. Safe connection means that you accept the individuality of a person and just accept whatever they want to do, whatever they choose to do. So it's this kind of just letting them do and letting them develop the way they would develop without interfering and saying, oh, I don't think that's the right choice. Because it's not about you, it's about the connection, right? And accepting them with whatever individuality that they show up with. Safe connection also means to protect and shield. So when we think about kids, when we think about having children, your role as a parent is to protect and shield them, to accept their individuality, to care and to love them, to comfort, reassure, and encourage them. This is not always the task, I would say, of like a friend. This is our task ourselves, like for ourselves, for our connection to ourselves, because this safe connection doesn't only exist with friends, family, loved ones, partnerships, but it has to exist within yourself. This is the safe connection to yourself, that you are able to protect and shield yourself, that you're able to accept yourself, that you're able to comfort, reassure, and encourage yourself as well. That you're able to support, nourish, and care for yourself, that you're able to show affection and connection and love. Again, this right side is more specifically written for parent-children relationships, but this has to happen for you to grow or mature, basically. Safety, or feeling safety within your body and being able to let go of things and not control things, to feel connectedness. When you have a safe connection with self, you will feel connected to everybody and everything around you. You're never lonely. Like, if ever, it doesn't happen to me, but like if ever there's an inkling of loneliness, I just have to drop into my body and I know I'm connected to everybody else. I'm connected to this entire world, to this entire dimension. Like, I'm connected. I feel it in my body. And when you have safe connection, you have attachment. But in this sense, I don't mean attachment as a negative thing. I mean attachment as a baby attaching to the parent, like grabbing onto them and being there and not just falling off, right? So this is when a toddler or baby really wants to attach to you and just be with you because you're safe for them. And that's what happens to my clients. Clients also can get attached to me for a limited amount of time, and that is okay. And it's my responsibility to then push them out into their own self, because my work in the one-to-one environment or in any type of group setting is always to model, to mirror, and to be a sort of parent, either mother or father, for a short amount of time so that you can reparent, is what we call it in the trauma terminology. This means that you have not been parented well by your parents, so we need to reparent those aspects within you, within yourself. And you do that with my help and with my guidance. And sometimes I have to take over in certain aspects when you do not parent yourself good enough. And there is a so-called good enough thing, for instance, when you're being very judgmental with yourself. So again, when you're doing the opposite of what is stated here, when you distrust yourself, when you doubt yourself, when you are not holding your emotions and you flee and you just start to scroll all the time. Yeah. When you cannot be mirrored, and when I confront you with your issues, you become defensive. So that is where I need to then take over in some forms and to like remind you, listen, and then explain things to you, and then become your mom or your dad for a little while. Secure attachment is the result of unconditional love. So unconditional love only happens within the age of 0 to 2. Ladies and gentlemen, Unconditional love cannot exist within a love relationship between two adults, between two consenting adults. That's a fairy tale. Yeah, that's like Disney. But unconditional love only exists for bebés, for little babies, for infants, because that's what they need. But when we have our share of that unconditional love already, or we've had that, we don't seek that from our relationships, because in adult relationships, the goal is not to receive unconditional love, because we have that within ourselves. I love myself. Why would I need another partner to give me validity of my love, to verify my worth? Like, why do I need that? I don't need another partner to love me. I need a partner to grow and to develop into a better person, and to become, of course, have and inhabit a new role, to embody being a wife, the mother, in my case, the wife, a mother, a sister, maybe a new daughter for somebody. So unconditional love only happens from 0 to 2 years of age. And after that, it becomes conditional. Why? Why do relationships become conditional? Because you can't just do anything. Imagine you dating somebody and they're saying, yeah, I love you unconditionally. That means I can do whatever. I can cheat on you. I can stamp on your values. I can treat you like shit. And you're going to stay? No, hell no. Your love has conditions. Every relationship has to have conditions. And that's just normal and mature and adult. So after 2 years of age, that's when a condition can occur. And for instance, for toddlers of 2 years, the condition could be no hitting. That's where you start to teach no hitting. Because at the beginning, children, they don't hit because they want to hit you. They hit because they're experimenting. They're using their bodies. They need to have like this sort of a feedback, a biofeedback. So they use all of their bodies and they happen to hit you. And if you see it, then you just catch it, right? And then after that, no hitting, because a child will start to understand with 2 years of age what no means. No is not clear to a 0-year-old infant. It doesn't understand what no is. It understands the energy of no, and that could potentially break a bond, and that's very dangerous at that age. So the condition, or the unconditional love means that, or the condition thereafter is, the interaction and secure attachment is predictable. When I shout for mommy, mommy's going to be there. So it's predictable. She's going to come. If she's not going to come, something's wrong, right? I need to worry. But if I cry, mommy's going to come. So I don't need to cry until I'm blue, or I don't need to cry until I pass out, or until I'm in freeze and then already get traumatized. Mommy or daddy is reliable, right? Predictable, reliable. It's kind of almost the same thing. So when I'm hungry, they know they're reliable. They know I'm hungry. When I'm sleepy, they know I'm sleepy. And consistent interaction. So consistent, right? They're always there. There's no one day this, one day that. And connection over time. Secure attachment. This might shock you. Secure attachment does not happen within a year. It happens, in the best case, within the first 3 years, which is why a child shouldn't go to daycare or to kindergarten before it's 3 years of age, because it hasn't fully formed the secure attachment. That's the reason. And it can get traumatized, and it'll think you'll never come back, because the object permanence starts at 3-4 years of age, where children know that an object will stay there, will return. Yeah. So it needs this consistent interaction and connection over time. And this connection has enough stability and enough flexibility. So that means you need to find a middle ground between stability and flexibility when you have children. So this stability and flexibility must be balanced. Too much stability, no development. If I'm too rigid, there's no way you can develop. If I say this is what you need to do, how will you ever break free from the limitation that I set you if you don't know that you can? Too little stability means no security. Too much flexibility means chaos, right? If a child doesn't know when you're coming back, it's complete chaos. Too little flexibility is again rigidity and control. So secure attachment and trust needs 3 to 6 years for a child to fully develop. So by the age of 6, it fully trusts you. This is like, I don't want to put this onto like adult relationships, because this is a child that is attached to you and that whose survival solely depends on you. It's not the same with two consenting adults. Your survival doesn't even depend on each other unless you're financially dependent on them, but then still both of you are able to survive individually, independently from each other. So the whole baseline of relationships in an adult setting is completely different than the baseline of a secure attachment of a child. If you're securely attached within yourself, you will immediately spot red flags. You will immediately spot red flags, and you will not even tolerate. You will have standards that are really high, and you won't even tolerate anybody below your standards at all, right? Because if you're great, if you like yourself, why would you be with somebody who doesn't? Why would you be with somebody less? What are signs of trauma in the body? So this is like where it starts to become really, you'll notice like this is where the power lies. So what can happen is dysregulation of the nervous system. What does dysregulation even mean? We'll get into that in a bit. It just means that you're out of your window of tolerance. You're out of being calm, connected, peaceful, happy, joyful, like, yeah. So if you feel frazzled, if you feel like you want to avoid things, you're scared, you're fighty, on edge, irritated, or you're a little bit like low energy, you are depressed, you're like the freeze states where the energy drops, that's a sign of dysregulation. And that's why I put it at the top, because it's like a very, very general term. But what can also happen, and this is very unfortunate, because this is like already every type of disease is just a symptom, and it's supposed to show you the reason behind it. So what you can do with every type of disease is you can decode it. Even if I just have pain in my wrist, this has a meaning. Every pain, everything that you hit, everything has a meaning. Even an accident has a meaning. So you can literally decode. For instance, let me give you an example. I wrote down chronic diseases, tumors, cancers, and infections. And for instance, a very popular cancer that's been rising recently is the uterus cancer. So cancer in the uterus. This is, or the meaning behind it is that there is a sexual conflict with your partner, meaning you don't feel desired anymore. And that's where that can develop. So if you know the topic and if you're working on it, the cancer might subside. Yeah. Anyway, so let's keep going. Not being able to distinguish the past from the present. So you're so you're stuck in flashbacks. You're stuck in the past emotions that you're not able to distinguish anymore. Is it really about this person right now, or is it about a story in the past? So are you triggered if I say something, and if I say, look, you're dumb for doing that, does it trigger you because your mother called you dumb all the time and you're still so angry at that? Or is it really about what I said, and did it really offend you what I said? Or do you kind of already know that I'm like, I sometimes talk like that, and then you don't need to take that seriously, right? Chronic stress and dysregulation and inflammation. So chronic stress is already dysregulation. Chronic stress causes inflammation and just destroys your body. Tense body and tense muscles. So if you're really rigid, if you're really tense, that's a very, very clear telltale sign of trauma. Memory disorders or deficits. So if you cannot remember your childhood, girl, boy, you have trauma. And it's usually because you were stuck in freeze for too long. So the freeze states usually tamper with your memory. Body remains in survival mode, so you're like in fast fight, flight, freeze 24/7 the whole time, which is like annoying. I didn't put fawn there because being like always being in people pleasing, that only happens when you're in relationship. When you're alone, it's usually then it turns into fight, flight, freeze. Hypervigilance, you're always vigilant, always checking everything. Anxiety and panic attacks are just panic itself. Constant ruminating and overthinking and strong avoidant behavior, also very evident for trauma in the body. Evaluation of everything and everyone and critical behavior towards others. So like you have to pick on everybody. You have to evaluate every movement, everything everybody said. Like, it's like this whole judgmental thing going on. And it can become extremely annoying, especially for other people, when you keep on yapping and evaluating everything that everybody does. Fear of making mistakes, being a perfectionist. Fear of judgment, fear of authentic expression is a sign of trauma in your body. Prefrontal cortex is less active. That means logical thinking and social behavior are diminished. You will know that when you become more emotional. I'll show you in a bit more emotional, or if you're in survival states. Decreases your window of tolerance, your capacity to hold emotions, or to hold anything, as a matter of fact, to hold stress. So you have difficulty holding emotions and you have to fix them or you have to stop them in other people or in yourself. Increased trigger potential, so many things activate or trigger you. And the difference is just an activation of something softer and a trigger is a bit harder or bigger. Trauma activates the fear system, so you'll be stuck in a loop of the fear system. The fear system is the system that I'll explain further in Dysregulate, which is a course about all the trauma responses and the nervous system and trauma. Over emotionality and sensitivity. When people cry too quickly, like they cry at everything, they even cry when they're supposed to be upset. Emotional flashbacks, as I explained earlier, is what is connected to complex PTSD, where you have a flashback back to the situation. It's like it's worse than a trigger, basically. And you can live in an emotional flashback. Your whole life can become an emotional flashback if your trauma is big enough, unfortunately. So, how can I dissolve trauma? Well, that's a very, very, very difficult question. Well, actually, it's not. It's actually an easy question for me, but it depends on which type of trauma you have. And individually, of course, on your complete individual situation. I hate it. Like, I think it's stupid when people are like, oh, I have this question. How do I dissolve this and this? And I'm like, girl or boy, like, listen, I don't know what your situation is. I don't know what your background story is. I don't know what your triggers are. I don't know what your trauma is. I need to know all of that in order to really discern which type of technique we can use and which is going to be the fastest. For instance, CPTSD with emotional flashbacks are treated differently than regular, I just put it like a regular, attachment trauma, developmental trauma, because it's so much more complex. And the fact that people that work with me can even go into an emotional flashback because of me, because sometimes it needs a word, one word, like even if I just say wrong, that could trigger a complete emotional flashback where you have panic attacks and whatnot. Like you can't even imagine sometimes when you have like proper CPTSD, it's horrible. And so when you have just the regular developmental trauma, that's different. I'm not saying easier. Sometimes the intensity or difficulty doesn't really depend on the type of trauma you have, but rather on the protective mechanisms that you started to use as a base of the trauma, and also on your positive reinforcement, like your positive resources that you already have. So if you're a person that, for instance, is not afraid and just has a problem with anger, it's easier than a person who has a problem with fear, because fear can lead you into panic attacks, and panic attacks need to be handled and treated first. So if you're able to handle your panic attacks, that's when you can go a step further. So as you see, it's not not very like straight-laced. I use different trauma healing techniques with shock trauma, for example, than I do with transgenerational trauma. So shock trauma is super easy to handle. Like it just needs one session, and that's it. Same with sexual trauma, for instance. If somebody was raped, this sounds awful, right? If somebody was raped, it's easier for me to dissolve than attachment trauma, because ideally, if the rape happened once, we only need to go into it once. If the attachment trauma happened over a long period of time, let's say sexual assault or sexual harassment or sexual abuse the whole childhood through, sheesh, that's really hard. Like that's gonna take a while. That's not gonna be very quick, right? So the thing that you need first is a secure connection, safe connection to a caregiver, a coach, or a therapist. Ideally, of course, to yourself, but you and your body are not going to be secure. You and your body are not going to be safe, which is why you need to dissolve the trauma in order to become safe again, right? And then you can do things yourself on your own. I also tell clients you can use trauma healing techniques if you're a bit more intermediate. Like if you've done a bit of work, if you feel your body, if you feel safer within yourself, you can do them yourself. You don't need me for that anymore. You need a regulated nervous system. I can't work with you if you are stressed, if you have tension in the body, like all the time, like if you're like this the whole time. We can't work on things. We have to regulate you first. The capacity to hold emotions in the here and now, like right now, that were caused by trauma and were too much to handle in the past. So, right, trauma is the pain, basically, the pain that you felt about an event that happened to you, and the pain needs to be handled in the here and now. Your capacity needs to grow so that you can handle the pain. If you still cannot handle the pain, you're just going to go into one of the F's. You're going to go into fight, flight, freeze or something. You're not going to properly process it. And trauma dissolution is the processing of it, to actually process what happened to you and to tell your body now that it's over. To be able to clearly differentiate and process the inner parts that you carry. So here we look at all the parts that you have. Do you have an inner critic? Do you have an inner speedy? Do you have an inner bad bitch? Whatever it is, to be able to clearly differentiate and process the inner parts. You need concrete or precise memory of the event, be it from your body or from your mind. You can talk about the traumatic event without dissociating. This is very important because I need you to be here, to be present. I can't have you dissociating because that would mean you're in freeze and you're not ready to dissolve the trauma. The willingness to let everything go in order to receive everything you've wanted or that you've always wanted. Trauma is not about, like, I'm going to crack you open and I'm going to take things out. It's about you letting go. It's mostly a letting go process, and it is a breaking open process, basically. The willingness to take responsibility for your human experience and, of course, for your actions in the long run. So not to be in victim mode anymore, but more about victim mode and all of that I will teach you in No Drama Llama. And trauma healing is not possible alone, because you were hurt in attachment, in connection, and you can heal again in attachment or secure connection. So that's like the baseline of trauma. You've been hurt in connection and you can only heal in connection, whether it be in connection to, as I said, a caregiver, coach, therapist, or in connection to yourself. Once you establish your connection to yourself, you can heal that. Alrighty, so now we're going to move into Nervous System 101. Our nervous system wants to protect us from dangerous situations and wants to act quickly so our survival is ensured. Doesn't give a shit. It doesn't care about your happiness. It cares about what is known to it. Meaning, if like violence is known, it's always going to seek violence and it's going to feel very comfortable in violence. Your nervous system is about what is known, what is comfortable. Yeah, so always remember, like, oh, what do I know from my childhood? Was it comfortable to be alone? Was it comfortable to be ignored? So you're always going to have situations where you feel good when you're ignored, where you have a partnership where somebody ignores you all the time. Your nervous system wants to be in homeostasis, meaning it wants to be in balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic states. I'll explain them to you in a bit. If danger, for example, is known, then your nervous system will always feel comfortable with danger and gravitate towards it. There's not much you can do other than heal your trauma and regulate your nervous system. A balanced nervous system looks like this. So basically you have the sympathetic response and the parasympathetic response. And the sympathetic response, I will show you again in a bit, is a activation, so it's like a mobilization, and then the discharge. So you have a charge that goes up and a discharge that goes down. So ideally in the body, the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, they work as a pendulum, like as a push-pull, like one side, the other side, one side, the other side. So it's always like a balance between both of them. And when we have a balanced nervous system, we're able to feel all the feelings and emotions without suppressing them and without feeling bad about them. We can self-regulate. This is what you learn as a kid, starting 6 months onward. If you have been properly and adequately if a caregiver was adequately treating you as a child with all your emotions and knew how to help you process them and start to self-regulate. So if you had co-regulation, you will be able to self-regulate. Co-regulation means that I, as a parent, help the child or soothe the child, comfort the child, help the child calm down. You have a down regulation and you have up regulation. So both exists, right? Up regulation means, whoa, like excited and like pushing them, and down regulation means lowering them. So we can experience and allow co-regulation as well if we have a balanced nervous system. So co-regulation also in terms of adult language means somebody can hug me and comfort me and I'll be okay with it. Sometimes people flee from emotions, so they don't feel comfortable with being co-regulated, and they can't be co-regulated, and that is because of trauma. Their balanced nervous system is free from trauma, has a healthy window of tolerance, aka safe zone or comfort zone. So let's keep going with the nervous system itself. So we have two basic parts of the nervous system. We have the central nervous system, the CNS, which is the stimulus processor and includes the brain and the spinal cord. So the brain and the spinal cord. And then we have the peripheral nervous system, which is the PNS, which includes voluntary and involuntary control of bodily functions, cranial nerves, spinal nerves, and sensory organs. So here you can see the peripheral nervous system has two different paths, which is the somatic nervous system. So NS always stands for nervous system, which means it's voluntary movements, and then the vegetative nervous system, which are involuntary movements. So voluntary means that you can actually steer them, that you can control them, and involuntarily means you cannot. So for instance, like breathing or your organ functions, your heart. And this would be somatic, would be like more the muscles, right? The muscles and the joints. So within the vegetative nervous system, we also have the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, and the gut brain. I'll tell you more about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic in a bit. The gut brain is basically our third or second, actually not third, second brain, where you will find lots of nerve endings, and the gut really is part of your entire well-being, right? So as many people say, what you eat and what you drink really makes who you are. So the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, I wanted to show you like the picture of it, of what it looks like in terms of nerve strands. And the sympathetic is a bit easier because it runs along the spine. It's basically connected to the spine, and it is the nerve or the nervous system that is connected to activity. Hence, it runs along the spine. Then we have the parasympathetic nervous system, which you see in red and in blue. So Again, the sympathetic nervous system has the fight-flight response within it, but I'll explain more about that later. And then the social engagement, the immobility. So we have the dorsal vagus nerve and we have the ventral vagus nerve. Ventral because it's in front of the dorsal. Dorsal is always at the back of a straight line. And the ventral vagal nerve, we call it ventral vagal or ventral vagus. So you might hear both terminologies, is the social engagement system. So this is one of the most important systems when it comes to trauma healing. This is also the system that gets hampered, that gets damaged when you have experienced severe trauma. This is linked to nerves controlling face, neck, larynx, and inner ear. And in my trauma healer certificate program, you'll find like even more insightful information on how you can stimulate that. But let me give you an example. Right now, you can stimulate the ventral vagus by just going into your ear and pushing forward or backwards into the vagus nerve. So it runs along your neck, the back of your neck. So basically, if you imagine your ear and then go a little bit behind it and then try to massage that part, that's going to feel very relaxing at some point. So that's your ventral vagus nerve. And then the dorsal vagus nerve is responsible for immobility. So as you can see here, the branches of both the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, they branch out to different areas. So here we have the lungs, then we have the organs, the stomach, the intestines, and so on. And you'll see which is responsible for which in a little bit. Right here. So when you are, and usually, as you know, it's like a wave. So there's always a charge and a discharge. There can be situations where the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system start at the same time, but that's usually due to heavy dysregulation and a severe traumatic childhood. Now, let's just assume the normal state, which is the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, not at the same time, as you can see here, because what the parasympathetic does is, for instance, it constricts the pupils, it slows down the heart rate, it slows the heartbeat, the airways, it constricts the bronchial tubules, it stimulates biorelease in the liver, it constricts the blood vessel, it stimulates activity in the digestive system, which is why we poop when we're in parasympathetic state, which is the more relaxed state, and when we're in an active state, the sympathetic state, we don't poop. We can't, usually. Right? The uterus is relaxed, the urinary system increases the urinary output. Now, the funny thing is, when you're in sympathetic, and maybe you know this, sometimes nervous pee, you have to pee when you're nervous, it's because the urinary system relaxes the bladder. That's why. Even though the parasympathetic nervous system is known for relaxation, it is here that your urinary system gets relaxed, mainly because when you flee and you have, I imagine like having 1 or 2 kilos of liquid in your belly, you want to get rid of it, so you pee so you can run faster or fight better. In the uterus, you have the vaginal contraction, adrenal glands, they stimulate the production of adrenaline, the digestive system has a decreased activity, the liver increases the rate of glycogen to glucose so that you have energy available, the sweat gland stimulates secretion to cool you down, airways dilates the bronchial tubes, so you have lots of oxygen running through the system basically. And the heartbeat increases as well because, as you know, if you, for example, work out, you know that your heart rate goes up when you do more strenuous activities. However, if you are stuck in sympathetic nervous system or in sympathetic mode, in sympathetic response, that means your heart rate is always increased. That is an indicator for stress, an indicator for anxiety, and so on. And the pupils dilate when you're in sympathetic nervous system in the sympathetic nervous system because you need, so more light can go in and you can scan the environment. Yeah. So what do these systems do beyond just being useful? Useful for your survival and your livelihood. And as you can see here, the sympathetic runs directly in the sympathetic ganglion. A ganglion is a connection of many nerve cells, and these nerve tissues or nerve cells are found directly in your spine. But as opposed to this one where you have the parasympathetic, it comes directly, as I've shown you earlier, from the social engagement system, the ventral vagus nerve. So the ventral vagus nerve here is responsible for these things, right? And then we have the sacral, which is responsible for these two. So when we look at the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, the sympathetic is more the activating and energy boosting, or has the effect of activating and energy boosting. It's responsible for tension, action, fight, flight, chase, and the stress response. And it makes us active and lively. However, it can become overloaded. That means because of trauma, you are not only temporarily, but even permanently in sympathetic nervous system response mode. Of course, you can change that. But me, for instance, I've been in sympathetic nervous system for like 3 years straight. I can tell you that right off the bat, 3 years straight. It got worse and worse and worse and worse. So it got increasingly worse, and I started first just being generally like just working a lot. Then I worked every day. Then I didn't take any breaks. I had 2 days off in 2021. 2 days only, the whole year. And I overworked myself. That's when I realized, or that's when I started getting restless. This is kind of the fun part about it, because you might feel as if you have lots of energy, but you're already overloaded. You should like calm the fuck down. I became more fidgety, more nervous. Hands tremble. So my hands didn't tremble, but or become moist, but my pulse started to race very quickly. I got angry very quickly, and you may be able to feel the pulse. So I felt the pulse like in my neck and in my head, and I got like heated up very quickly. Reduced need for sleep and difficulty falling asleep. Like every day I had difficulty falling asleep. I needed like stimulation to fall asleep, which is pretty counterproductive because like Instagram and all that stimulates you so you can't fall asleep. But I felt like I needed that to calm down, which is so, again, counterintuitive. And I didn't have a lot of need for sleep, so I slept like 5 hours a day. And I ran on empty, like I ran on low bat, but for a really long time, like 2 years. And then I had pre-burnout symptoms, and then I knew, okay, I have to pull the plug. The parasympathetic nervous system is there for energy storage, building, recovery, and regeneration. So while the sympathetic is for energy boosting, for working, for being, on the go, the parasympathetic is energy storage, building, recovery, and regeneration. So rest and digest, as we say. Digestion, elimination, relaxation, and rest, relaxing and letting go. And if it's overloaded, it becomes the freeze state. So tired, dull, listless, and exhausted. Slow mornings, like you won't get going in the AM. Like it's like you slept so much, but you still need more sleep. Like, yeah, it never ends. You have the feeling that you need to sleep more, even if you've been sleeping like 15 hours a day. Frequent low blood pressure, cold hands, and feet or cramps. Both of these states are not normal. That means you're already in an overloaded state, and that can quickly change if you start to mobilize your nervous system. So I love this part. What influences our nervous system? And if you have feedback, just let me know. I'd love to talk to you about it on Instagram or in my DMs. So let's conduct a little experiment. I'd love for you to really take the time. Do not watch this on double speed or anything. Look at the picture and really feel into your body. What does it do to your body? And I'll give you a couple of seconds for each picture. So, what were you able to feel in your body when you looked at these pictures? Feel free to pause this, feel free to go back and check. And most people that have done this with me live experience that they feel calm when there's a happy picture, that they feel distressed when there is a picture about violence or any type of like not pleasing, scenery. And it just shows you how easily manipulated your nervous system is, how easily influenced it is. And this is why you need to be so careful as to what kind of environment you have, because your environment, especially when we talk about social media and consumption, your environment and your consumption is everything. It influences your nervous system the whole time. So let's get into the responses of our nervous system. When our system is threatened or under stress, it reacts with one of these responses. We have the fight response, which is literally kicking, screaming, punching, killing if you want to. We have the flight response, running away, avoidance, hiding. We have the fawn response, people-pleasing, submitting, bowing down to someone. The freeze response, immobilization, shutdown, collapse. And we have another type of response, which is asking and looking for help. And this is green, you'll see in a bit, because this comes from a regulated state. So there are other responses as well that are more positive, but I just wanted to include the ones that are like usually occur during my sessions with my clients. So the responses of our nervous system in our brain, we have three basic areas in our brain that are important for your trauma and for your trauma healing. We have the brain stem and we have the cerebellum. When we have, I would love to explain this to you, but it's a bit more complex, but I'll explain that in dysregulate. But I can kind of simplify it. So when we have trauma does not only is not only pain that is unprocessed and that's stored in your brain, it is also separating your brain. So the brain gets separated from, so the right and the left hemisphere get separated from each other, and the top and the bottom. When I say top and bottom, I'm talking about like this. Right? So these get separated from each other, that people stay in a survival state, which is the reptile brain, the reptilian brain, the brain stem and the cerebellum, which is located, this is the cerebellum, and this down here is the brain stem. It's not really, like, you can't really see it very clearly. And then this includes fight, flight, fawn, freeze. This is also where breathing is located. This is where like the basic motor skills are located. This is absolutely existential for survival. This is absolutely necessary. This is how we survive. However, many people are in this state the whole time. How do you know that they are? It's because they always talk about surviving. It's because they always make ends meet. It's because they are always in a lack state. The lack state is a survival state. They're always struggling. There's always drama going on. They are not in abundance. They don't feel good about themselves. They feel the need to put others down. So there's so much going on here. They're afraid. They are frozen. They have disorders, diseases, and so on. This is a survival state. Now, when we have trauma, we mostly function in survival or emotional state. We don't often go into the executive state, unfortunately. Yeah. So what we want to do in trauma healing is we want to mold, or we want to kind of migrate back to the executive functioning. We want to be able to see their survival, to kind of observe, okay, I'm in survival mode, I see that, but as a bystander, not really being in it and being like AWOL, And then we want to observe when we become emotional, that also here we become a bystander of the emotion as opposed to being in it and fighting and, being all emotional in that sense. And the emotional system includes, which you'll find here, is the limbic system, which includes the amygdala, the hypothalamus, and the hippocampus. So these are very important areas in your brain that will make you more emotional. And then we have the executive functioning, which is the neocortex, which is this whole thing. The neocortex, the two hemispheres. Language is where that's at the Wernicke areal. We have abstract thoughts, we have logic, we have creativity, and many more here within the neocortex. And this is where you can function executively, where you have the kind of logical ability to discern things without becoming emotional, without being in a survival state. And what this looks like in a real life example, for example, you don't want to be touched. Somebody just touches you. You don't want to be touched. You're an adult. You're not a kid, okay? A kid, same way, by the way, but just with a different expression depending on how old the kid is. So let's go back to survival. If I don't want to be touched and if I'm completely in survival state, I'm probably going to just kick you, punch you. I'm going to hide. I'm going to shout. I'm going to run away. I'm going to submit. I'm going to freeze, or I'm going to avoid. When I'm in the emotional state, I'm probably going to curse at you, like, leave me alone, stop that, you idiot. I'm probably going to express fear. Not everything at the same time, but like one, depending on what your nervous system leans towards. Because your nervous system, this is also what neuroplasticity is all about. You can change your nervous system. However, your nervous system is also used, as I said, if it's used to danger, it's going to lean towards danger. If it's used to a certain expression, let's say if it's used to being in fear more than it's used to being in fight, then you have to balance the expression. You have to go more into your anger, fight, and so on response, so that you'll not automatically always trigger the fear response. Anyways, emotional, you idiot, leave me alone. The executive would be being able to explain what's happening and why. I don't like being touched. Could you please remove your hand? That's the executive functioning. That's like the mature way of communicating. That's what we ideally want, right? When we talk to other adults. When you're in survival or emotional states, there is zero chance of reasoning with the other person because you can't talk to them. They literally are like a rabid dog. I mean, it's a bit much, but they literally are like a rabid dog. They're out to destroy, they're out to hide, they're out to just withdraw, right? They can get in touch with you because they are not in their social engagement system. In the social engagement system, that's why I use the same color as well, is just the comfort zone, the window of tolerance as well. And they have to get back to the executive state, aka regulated state. And the same goes for kids. Stop fucking talking to your child when it's dysregulated. It doesn't help. It won't help you. It simply cannot respond to you because it's so overwhelmed in survival states and emotional states that it can't respond to you logically from the executive functioning. And this is what you have to understand with people, dealing with kids, dealing maybe with people that you work with, right? Your loved ones as well. Now, the responses of our nervous system and our brain, we have the left and the right hemisphere. And when we have trauma, the left and right hemisphere get separated so that we start to only operate from the left hemisphere, which is the logical side, the very scientific side, right? But what we need the integration of the right side, and the right side is the creative, intuitive side. The implicit side. Implicit means that it is memory stored in the body that you cannot access if you just think about it, right? That's why we need nervous system work, and that's why we need body-based work as well. The explicit side, the explicit memory is the memory that you can remember, that you can recall. But the implicit is body-based memory. This is what happens to you from birth, prenatally, until the age of 3, because the left hemisphere goes online at 3 years of age onwards. But the right hemisphere stores everything at the beginning. That's why we can't remember anything until the age of 3. That is the explanation for that. But so many things happen to us until the age of 3. And most of these things are extremely traumatizing, and we have to access them. And we could only access them through our nervous system and through our body via body-based healing methods. Oh, one more thing. One thing that helps you integrate both sides are techniques such as EMDR, because you use a lot of cross techniques. When you have something that's crossing, is good for your brain. That's what you want, because that helps the brain integrate from left and right. And then from the states, how to integrate these states that I showed you, these have to be integrated by regulation, nervous system regulation, nervous system work, and trauma healing as well. And when we heal trauma, we also integrate both sides as well. Now let's move to the polyvagal theory of Stephen Porges. This is like a super, super important graphic that I wanted to show you. And I've included a ladder. Why a ladder? You need to climb these states up the same way you climb them down. You cannot skip a state. What does that mean exactly? Before I explain everything to you, I'm gonna just focus on these 3 states. So remember, let's go back here. It's kind of the same thing. Executive, being regulated. Emotional, well, these kind of mix in the other graphics. So you have to take each graphic as it is for what it is, because they each mean something different. So here you have the connected state: social engagement, regulated, executive functioning. When something happens in your life and you switch to fight flight, you're in a survival mode. You go into the sympathetic nervous system, so you climb up the ladder, and if you know how to self-regulate, to soothe yourself, you can easily climb back down. Easily, right? That's a healthy nervous system. A healthy nervous system, as you can see here, is the balance between the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. This is the so-called window of tolerance. This is the healthy amount. So you can go lower, you can go higher. However, when you have been in the flight-fight state for a long amount of time, you automatically have to go up. If you're not coming down, if you're not going to relax, if you're not going to go back to social engagement, if it gets worse, if for instance, the trauma becomes bigger or other trauma tops it, then you will go into the free states. Again, like a ladder. So if I'm climbing up to the free state, if I'm in freeze, I have to climb through fight, flight, and then back down to social engagement. So there is no other way. If I have depression, there's no other way but to go through fear or through anger. No other way. And that's what people don't understand. Because once they're in freeze, they're literally frozen. They're immobile. It's immobility. That means you're like tired, like the symptoms that I showed you with the parasympathetic overdrive, right? You feel trapped, hopeless, shut down. You have shame. You keep on saying, I cannot. You are helpless. It's energy saving mode. You have numbness, dissociation. You feel overwhelmed. If you go out from that by means of nervous system regulation, you will be angry or you will be scared. And that's what's so hard, because this is an emotion most people don't want to feel, and they go back to freeze. So instead of going all the way back down, they stop right in the middle because it's too much for them to handle, and then they go back up and freeze. And that's something that's, extremely bad for your body, because as you can see here, what actually happens when you're in freeze? When you're in freeze mode, you're in parasympathetic nervous system, but the dorsal vagal leg, which is, I'll show you right here again. There, it's this one, right? This is the freeze state. Here you can see it in red. That's why I put the blue button there. And it increases energy storage and insulin activity. That means it also increases fat storage, right? You become bigger. You become more sedentary. Endorphins that sedate start. You'll actually feel good, which is bad, because this is also the explanation why procrastination works. Procrastination is a flight response that goes into freeze, and it works because once you stop procrastinating and doing everything, you have the endorphins that sedate you. It's horrible. It's like a drug. What the freeze state decreases, it decreases the pulse, the blood pressure, temperature, so you feel cold all the time. Yeah, in case you feel cold all the time, now you know why. Muscle tone, facial expression, eye contact, expression overall, social behavior, sexual responses, and immune responses. That's what the freeze state decreases. Fawn, you'll find in freeze state if it's about submission. There's another fawn in the fight flight stage when it's about fighting for principle one has to adhere to, like kind of it's very close to fight, like, oh, you can't do that because. So as you can see here clearly, I cannot. It's like this, the freeze state goes all the way into collapse and immobility and shutdown and preparing for death. So preparing for death is like the use of freeze, because when you have been hunted, or when you're hunted by a tiger and the tiger catches you and wants to eat you, you will be rewarded with endorphins because you should be sedated when you die. Since you can't fight or flight anymore, or fawn, because it's a tiger, you're going to be sedated and you die. And you prepare for death. That's what the freeze state is in. When you then leave a child to cry, a child crying is in a sympathetic nervous system because it's active, right? It's crying. If it keeps crying, it can't cry anymore. At some point, it goes into freeze. And this is where you don't want your child to be ever. All right. Now, flight and fight are in the same sympathetic nervous response place. Flight is movement away, and fight is movement towards. Flight, we have panic, fear, fright, worry, and rumination, so overthinking. And fight, rage, anger, irritation, frustration. Here, you know that you can, but it's almost like I can do it better than anybody else. So it's a lot of fighting, a lot of like proving yourself and stuff like that. Now, when you are here instead of just here, this is already dysfunctional. Here, this is part of the window of tolerance. And when you have trauma, the window of tolerance can unfortunately move, and you can be temporarily or permanently in fight, flight, or in freeze. But this is like really in-depth stuff I'm going to discuss more in dysregulate. So when we're in sympathetic nervous system, what increases here? Obviously, pulse, blood pressure, because we want energy, right? Energy availability, adrenaline, oxygen, blood clotting, and size of pupils. So the blood clotting is supported. Yeah. Decreases energy storage, insulin activity, digestion, saliva, ability to relate, and the immune response. And now we have the green zone, as I like to call here. We have joy, being present, feeling grounded, safety, attentiveness, compassionate, curious, openness, everything great under the sun in the social engagement system, or the connectin system. And it increases digestion, movement ability of intestine, resistance against infections, immune response, rest and regeneration, circulation to non-life sustaining organs, such as skin, arms, and legs, oxytocin, the hormone that helps you connect to other people, ability to have compassion and to connect with someone, and it decreases the defensive reaction. So if somebody is defensive, you know they are definitely in flight, fight. Yeah? Now you can again see where everything is. The red part is the sympathetic nervous system. Then the red part here is the actual blue part. It's a bit reversed, but I felt like fight, flight is red, is something that moves, and freeze is something blue that's just frozen as a lake. And if you are in the freeze, or in freeze, you first have to go through fight, flight to get back to the green zone through nervous system regulation somatic practices. Which ones? I'm going to tell you now. In freeze, imagine you're frozen. You don't immediately shake a person, or you don't ask them to come on, just move. No, because they're frozen. So you have to mobilize them slowly, by means of smells, by means of pendulum movements, by means of drinking water. Then, when you are in fight-flight, you are already moving. that's when you can shake off energy. That's where you can dance. That's where you can tremble. Trembling and shaking is the natural response of the body to release stress and to release traumatic energy. That's why we tremble and we shake after traumatic events. It's good. It's not a bad thing. Let it happen. Moving, shouting loudly, sighing, making noises, even singing can regulate you. And when you are close to your window of tolerance again, that's when you can do deep breathing, massages, touch. You'll even if you're here in the center, you can be co-regulated. Even in freeze, you can be co-regulated. It's just more difficult. Yeah, because the goal is not to always have somebody else that needs to co-regulate you, but for you to actually know all of this, to feel this in your body and to experience that. And for that, especially my German leg at the moment, I have somatic practices that I do weekly, and I'll be starting somatic practices in the international, in English as well soon, because at the moment they're just in German, and I want to expand into English, and they'll be for free in the near future. I cannot wait, because this is where we will practice the nervous system regulation. Neuroplasticity or neuronal plasticity. So there are two words for that. Neurons that fire together wire together. So only if a neuron is being used, that's when they start increasing. That's the principle also why you may love danger, because you're used to danger. The neurons fire together during danger and they love it. So neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to form new neuronal networks, learn new things, and adapt. To continue forming synapses beyond old age, and that's why you can learn forgotten things again and again, and you can always learn new things, and you can teach an old dog new tricks. That's definitely possible, yeah? Now, trauma and stress in any form not only trigger the automatic fight, flight, freeze, fawn response, but also act like an attack on the system in the brain. Through such an attack, our immune system is activated, and messenger substances such as cytokines can trigger inflammation instead of fighting it. So that even means that neurons can diminish due to trauma, because it triggers inflammation in your body, not just in your brain, not just in all the places where you have neurons, which is like everywhere in your body, but it can also reduce the amount of nerves that you have in your body. Factors that influence your nervous system, obviously trauma, right? Keeps your body in dysregulation and attacks your immune system. Nervous system regulation on the positive note. So self-regulation, auto-regulation, and co-regulation. I'll talk about all of these in depth in Dis to Regulate. Diet. Omega-3 fats, good for you, versus omega-6 or 9 fats. Meat, caffeine. Meat depends on the person. Some really are doing well with meat, like me. And caffeine, same thing. Some do really well with caffeine, but most caffeines have mold, and the mold is what makes you so jittery. So always opt for a mold-free caffeine. And it's also sympathetic stimulant. So obviously it's going to activate the sympathetic nervous system. Just be mindful of that. Yeah, just know that. Alcohol, that stuff disrupts brain cell communication. It's just not good for your health at all, even in small amounts. And sugar as well kills gray brain cells. It fills your cells and makes them it makes them more conducive for cancers to form and stuff like that. And then we have energy drinks. So it's not always bad stuff. There's also good stuff, but then there's also bad stuff like energy drinks. It's a mix of both sugar and caffeine. So yeah. Lifestyle. Lots of sitting, like sedentary lifestyle influence our nervous system. Lots of media consumption. New learning. So in a positive way. Languages. New experiences. Nicotine kills brain cells and prevents new ones from being formed. Yay. Little sleep or a lot of sleep, right? As we had with the basic needs. Relationships. Little understanding of who you are, of what you do, of why you do it. Lots of arguments, or co-regulation and loving interaction can influence your nervous system. The goal of nervous system work and trauma healing is, at the end of the day, to be able to feel every feeling and emotion in every situation. So you have the resilience and the capacity to go head on with everything that life throws at you. You can increase your stimulus response time to avoid acting reactively. That means if something happens, I don't react right away. I just wait and think about, like, how do I want to react? What does it make me feel? And what kind of contact and communication do I want to be with when I do it with you? Feel and experience the full range of human emotions, so not just happiness, but also sadness, anger, and be okay with it, right? Dealing with bullshit in a different, more adult, solution-oriented way, so you're not reacting like a little child, but you're an adult, you can control your emotions, you're fine. Even if something makes you feel a certain way, that's okay, and you know how to deal with it. Being able to listen to your body, knowing when intuition strikes, knowing when something's not good for you, knowing when you should slow down, when you can speed up. Making relationships deeper and more loving. Being able to set and maintain boundaries. Setting is easy, maintaining is hard. Having access to joy, gratitude, peace, and bliss at all times. Being able to distance yourself from negative events and stay with yourself, and even distance yourself from family members if necessary, and do you, and walk your life and go along your path. Being able to build security in your own body and a secure connection to yourself, to have the capacity to do hard things and achieve tremendous success. Live out your vision and mission without fear, of course, and transcendence and self-realization. Obviously, I mean, not being sick is also a really big plus, you know? Like living a long, healthy, and just fulfilled life. That's the goat of trauma healing. Healing is a process of subtraction. And I always love this kind of onion allegory, or this onion metaphor. So imagine your core is this. This is your core, that little thing. I mean, you're not that little, but there's so many layers that you have to peel off in order to get to that, in order to live it authentically. Because at the moment, all these layers represent masks that you've put on yourself, that you have been forced to put on yourself from whomever, from trauma, from society, from your parents. And it's time to subtract that, to get rid of it, right? To peel the onion, so to speak. And products that will support your trauma healing journey. So at the moment, they are not online, but they will go online soon. And by the time of this, when you see this recording, I'm sure it's already there. So I am gonna record or re-record No Drama Llama in English, which is all about a drama-free life, and you have no clue what constitutes or what entails as drama, because there's so much to learn when it comes to having a no drama llama life. And then I have another course, which is like such a successful course, called Happy Penis. I love it how it autocorrects to happiness, but it's Happy Penis, and it's about creating happiness within just 1 week, and like maintaining happiness as well in your body. And then the big goat, nervous system and trauma healing, completely explained within this course. This is going to be like I'm still figuring out the type of course I want it to be, because I want you to be in interaction with me, and I want you to have a chance to have like a one-to-one session with me on this one. And it's Dysregulate 3.0. Why 3.0? Because in the German leg of my business, I've had the first Dysregulate and the second 2.0 Dysregulate, so now it's 3.0. And that's going to come soon as well. And obviously, rooms that support you, THS, is going to come at some point. The trauma healing space is going to go international. It's just a matter of time. That's all it is. It's just a matter of time and preparation. And of course, you can book your one-to-one experience anytime, 3 to 12 months. Sometimes I have like, little offers that I have here and there. And the special thing about the one-to-one experience is that you have Telegram support each and every day. That means I am really with you in every situation in your life, and can help you and can support you with every situation. So for those who want trauma healing on speed dial and inquire for pricing, at the moment, my 3 months, they start at 8K, so 8,000 euros, but I also offer payment plans. So let me know what suits you best. But I also do a per session base, which would be, I think, about 600 euros for a session as of today. What's this? February 6th, where I'm recording this. So I thank you for your time and attention. I hope this information was valuable to you and can make your life much better and much more enjoyable, of course, so that you're not just surviving but actually thriving. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and see you soon.